Welcome back to the Legal Roundup podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Davis, and today we have Sean Chun, one of our associate attorneys, and he's going to be joining us as we talk about a very scathing topic. Recently, we have been getting a lot of hits on our website dealing with a particular article and popularity as Black Friday has rolled around. And in the realm of personal injury, injuries and deaths are no stranger to Black Friday, which is crazy because there's always tons of people out. There's always tons of people getting hurt, injured, and you hear about, tramplings and stampede mentality, and it's crazy. So we're going to get into some of the minutia and the details, insights of Black Friday shopping. So as far as the Black Friday shopping frenzy is concerned, there is a counter online called the Black Friday death count, which is so funny that somebody had the time.
Terrible we even have to have something like that.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad we even really, that it's happened that much, but there have been 17 reported deaths.
Wow.
125 injuries, according to this website, since 2006.
Wow.
Which, go to this site at your own risk. For some reason, whenever I pulled it up, it said it's not secure, but we went into it anyways. Just make sure you're using a VPN. I'm not going to plug any VPNs since nobody is sponsoring this video.
No free ads.
Wink, wink. So, as far as it relates, in the instance that, let's say you go out, you're with your family, Black Friday shopping, it's late at night. It's already dark. People are crazy. They've been waiting outside of GameStop or Best Buy for 8 to 10 hours, and you're getting into the store. But as soon as they open the floodgates, it's just like a stampede every time, and people almost lose that part of their brain that makes us human. And they kind of let the animalistic side take over. But I've seen so many instances of people, like for example, so a lot of these are like from being shot, but there is so here in 2016, now this was in Africa, so it wasn't in America, but a woman was hurt, during a stampede in a South African mall. As far as, let's say that happened here at, say, like somewhere, I don't know if Mall of America is still a thing.
I believe it is. Up in Minnesota?
Yeah. So let's say you're at, you're with your family, like I said, and you're at, the Mall of America, and there's a stampede, and it tramples you and, your kids. Let's say you're at a Toys R Us in there, even though it's gone. Let's just say verbatim, maybe there's a Best Buy or something, and, if there's nothing to really, let's say that they have the entrance kind of blocked so that people are kind of corralled when they come in. If it's not set up correctly, or if it kind of hinders, traveling, if somebody getting trampled, what would, notate, what would they do as far as, like, they go and they get a lawyer? Who would you pursue as far as fault if you were put in that, like, on a case where you had to defend a client against maybe, let's say, Best Buy or somebody like that?
Well, you could try and go after the individuals trampling you, but, if there's so many, there's no telling who did it or how to find them. So, in that case, you could go after the store, and that is, on the store's part, it sounds like in a situation like that, they're creating a dangerous condition.
Right.
So depending on your state, if they're creating a dangerous condition and they're not taking proper measures to remedy that or prevent it in whatever way, you could go after the store for negligence, or God forbid, like in some of these situations where someone passes away, that you'd have a wrongful death claim on top of that.
That's what I was thinking too, is that in an instance where you made your store more accessible, would that dictate fault? Because if they tried to set it up to make it more accessible, wouldn't that still, fall under negligence?
That would be something that I guess would be determined by a jury. The triers of fact into whether that business made their premises reasonably safe or not. You know, if
Okay.
they set up a line with cones and barriers and you're putting one person in at a time, you know, that sounds like a pretty safe condition.
Yeah,
But if you've got this narrow hallway and you let 500 people sprint down this narrow hallway,
completely
sounds like to
unprecedented.
me you're creating a dangerous condition on your premises.
And see, that's what I would think. It's kind of, you know, does it? Because I don't understand quite the difference. Because I'm assuming all torts are not the same, but all tort process is the same. So, like in the case of, let's say, somebody's not getting trampled, but it's really busy, and one of the retail associates notices that somebody came with a like a drink and they spilled it on the floor, and all they did was went over there and put a sign on it, but somebody still, you know, they can't see it because the crowds of people, and they slip and fall. Then you have a slip and fall case, right?
Ooh. Well, that'd be really interesting because you are supposed to let, in this case, it would be a business invitee. If there is a dangerous condition and I guess you couldn't remedy it quickly, make it very well known there's that condition so they can avoid it.
Right.
But if you're in a crowd of 500 people and you can't notice that sign, or say someone kicks that sign out of the way, now you've got a really complicated situation.
You see, that's what I've always wondered about slip and falls, is because I can't tell you how many times whenever I worked retail that there was something got spilled, but everything was crazy. So they put a sign on it and they didn't even try to mop it up. They just left the spill. Like I feel like it's one thing if they went over there, they tried to clean it up, and then, you know, they put some signs around it. But in a situation like that, I feel like you really got to have people at the door making sure people aren't bringing that stuff into the store, because then you create an environment. And I know that the store can't man every single person, but I'm sure there's liabilities in place for some businesses that have that, just in case that happens. But in the situation of, like, let's say, for instance, somebody gets let into a mall and they get into the Dillards, let's say, like over here at North Park, and they go in and they grab an item and somebody else grabs an item on the shelf at the same time. And you got like one of those, you know, what's that movie called? I have to think about it.
Man, I feel like I could. Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, over the action figure.
Is it Jingle All the Way?
I believe
think it's Jingle All the Way. And, you know, everybody's fighting over the action figure, you know, the Turbo Man doll. So I've actually seen something like that in real life, but eventually, luckily enough, the lady was like, "Screw it, you can have it."
It's
and let
not
go.
worth it at that point.
It's not worth it. But in the case like obviously, if they get physical, it becomes kind of domestic at that point. But if somebody pulls out a gun and shoots somebody in a crowd, it goes kind of beyond the store's, you know, premise at that point, right?
I would definitely say so. Someone could try to argue that the store could have had metal detectors to stop them or anything like that. But at that point, that feels like such an independent act beyond the store that it'd be really hard to put that on the store.
That's what I'm saying, is because I know that, you know.
Now, maybe if you're at a Academy Sports or a Bass Pro Shop and they grab the gun off the wall and use it instead of bringing it in, you got a very different situation.
That's what I'm saying, because, you know, during that time of the year when sales associates are being bugged by 20 people at once, let's say in an instance somebody goes over to Bass Pro and they're checking out a rifle and they just so happen to have the right, ammo on the shelf, and they don't have a lock on the trigger.
Yeah.
And they just start loading the gun, you know, Terminator style, and just start blowing people away.
Yeah.
Like in the store. Then I feel like, of course, at that point, that becomes like straight up just liability. But then do you sue the store or do you sue the employee? And I feel like, I mean, could you sue them both technically?
So you could try, but here in Mississippi, when you have a respondent superior where an employee, a company would be liable for the employee, it almost kind of counts as one claim, and they don't want you doubling up on the same claim. So you really kind of got to pick or choose there, and it's a much better option to go with the store due to the amount of money they would have versus, say, an individual.
Naturally, because, you know, trying to sue an individual that doesn't have anything already, it just kind of feels like pissing in the wind, I guess. Whereas whenever you know, of course, employees get some kind of immunity, I think, with certain stores. But in the case of, like, I think Guitar Center, maybe, there's a store I worked for that if you just so happen to be in chain of liability, of course you're probably going to lose your job, but you could also stand to be sued as well. But I was just curious because I didn't
Well,
know.
there is some differentiation on that too, where, you know, if an employee really goes beyond the bounds of their duty, then that would absolve the store, and you would have to just solely go after the employee.
That is nuts. Well, one of them says shirtless man uses belt as a whip outside Vancouver Black Friday sale.
Goodness.
So in that instance, since he's on the outs, obviously it's domestic. But let's say that there's like something happens on the outside of the storefront. Would the store, if something were to happen to somebody that caused them an injury, in general, outside of a storefront, would it still? Could you still? You know, could the victim still, you know, try to sue the business since they're outside of the store?
Well, it depends if you're still on the store's property or not.
Okay.
You know, if, say, you're in the store's parking lot and they own the parking lot and no one else, and say you've just got a random hole in the parking lot, hard to see, and you trip and fall in it, if that is the store's parking lot and that dangerous condition exists on their premises, then they could be held liable.
That's interesting. You see, I got into this conversation, which is a little off topic of Black Friday injury, but it could happen because there's so much traffic going on during Black Friday. My supervisor, one of our consultants, Gene, him and his wife were out at, I think they were at Books A Million the other weekend. They just smacked into Amanda's car, you know, she called the police and everything. The lady was trying to drive away or something like that without giving them like information. And, you know, Amanda just kind of looked and she was like, well, and she calls the law. Well, Flowood PD comes out there and they assess the situation. They're like, well, technically, since it happened on public property, they couldn't do anything about it. And they could not file a report. So in an instance where, let's say that it's the parking lot is public property, they still wouldn't be able to do anything about it, I guess.
Yeah, you'd have to go after the individual tortfeasor in that situation.
How would you go? I'm assuming you would obviously have to get a lawyer. What does a tort case even kind of look like for something of that caliber?
In Gene's situation?
Or like in like, let's say, a Black Friday injury type of situation. So let's say that's what happens. Let's say that kind of like Gene's situation. It just so happens to happen during the Black Friday shopping, and you know they're kind of overwhelmed. There's lots of traffic. They call the law, and they tell them we can't do anything for you. So and then you're like, okay, well you fire back and you get their information. You get a lawyer. What would a tort case look like in an instance where you were trying to take that individual to court?
Yeah, well, so first you'd have to find their information and all that, which, you know, without a police report or anything, that could be quite difficult. What I would do personally is nowadays, a lot of businesses have cameras, or anything around the area would have a camera over the parking lot.
Smart.
And there's a situation where, you know, you could obtain their camera, whether it's just requesting it or maybe you have to subpoena it later on, but you could hopefully get maybe a license plate out of that. And then you could find the driver's details, and then you could proceed with everything from there. If you weren't able to locate the driver in any way, shape, or form, at that point it would go to your uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage.
Okay. So essentially your insurance would take care of that. In that case, you know, that's kind of how that will go. In the instance you do find them, of course you find them, and I'm assuming it would still kind of be like a typical claim process where they could either settle with their insurance company or you could take them to court. Because I know a lot of tort is, you know, obviously mostly trial based, right?
Well, did you
Or
say for court?
yeah.
Yes, court would be. Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming that most of those kind of cases like that, though, you know, are probably far and few between as far as like parking lot stuff. But then again, I see it happen all the time.
Yeah, we've had several that have accidents in the parking lot.
Really?
I can't say of any where they fled from the parking lot, but we've had some hit and run cases before. In fact, where we've had to go through this process, and it can be a little difficult to track down a defendant in that case.
You know what I'm noticing? A lot of these are they're like got shot in a shot in the Walmart parking lot over parking space.
Mm. Mm.
Could you imagine being shot by somebody, and just because of a parking lot space?
Man, people are crazy out there nowadays. They are, unfortunately.
So this happened in Muskegon, and this girl was trampled in a Black Friday Walmart rush, and this was 2011. Says a teen girl was trampled at a Walmart store rollover accident on Harvey Street, and even a shortness of breath call at Victoria's Secret added up to headaches. That's nuts. Okay, so you know, I really wonder how many cases there are, you know, that go undocumented per year that you know, end up with tramplings, because I feel like a lot of them are brawls, and there's a lot of shooting. It seems like, you know, so according to Gitnux, there's 12 reported deaths and 117 injuries since 2006. Whereas, you know, a lot of them, it seemed they range from minor cuts and bruises, from being like bumped and shoved. Some are like fractures and concussions. So in an instance where you do get injured, and let's say it's just cuts and bruises, could you still like file a claim for something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely could. Now, is it worth it or worth your time? That's a different question, and that would be up to you. But, you know, say you got some cuts and you didn't go see a doctor or anything, well, now your injuries have no value and there's nothing to it. And, you know, some people like to take precautions. I don't know if myself, if I got a cut, if I'd necessarily go to a hospital or anything like that. So, you know, if you have a serious injury, like a fracture or something, obviously you have a big claim. It's just minor injuries. I don't believe there'd be much value in the claim, while you will still have a claim at the same time.
You see, that's what I always wonder, especially whenever we talk about car wrecks, is because I know that, you know, sometimes when it's like minor injuries, it becomes almost more damage based, more about the actual physicality of their property rather than medical bills, because you know, they might go to the hospital and they have a few cuts on their face, or you know, something like that. So I don't know if that matters really. Because, you know, some people, they get sue crazy, I guess, you know, and they're just like, yeah, for every little thing.
I mean, and you're right, people do that, and in this situation, they would have a claim. It would be a low value claim, but they would still have one.
But it'd be a claim.
And they would be there. Yes, they could.
That is nuts. That's nuts. You see, I always thought, well, if it's not like severe, then, you know, it's just like, you know, don't even worry about it.
Yeah, that's just a personal decision, whether you're willing to pursue your claim or not, no matter how minor or how big.
My goodness. So that's crazy. I mean, out of 196 million people, I'm sure there's at least 20%. I'm sure there's at least 20%. As you know, let's see, not last year, but the year before, there was almost 200 million people that participated, which is crazy compared to COVID, since COVID happened. Which, you know, there's, funny enough, we were talking about it earlier, and there's actually one instance on here where there were 2 people shot and killed in Northern California, and it looks like they didn't find him. Just a gunman. He got away, and it does not look like they ever found the guy. It doesn't. It looks like there is no continuation or anything. God, that's gotta suck. Man, I can only imagine. I've heard of people knocking over store sets too, and it crushing people. In that instance, would that obviously it would end up they would have no choice but to go for the store. But in the case it kills somebody, how would you even go? How does wrongful death even work in some kind of instance like that?
Yeah, so wrongful death, obvious part of this, someone passed away.
Right.
It's typically as a result of negligence. It could be an intentional act, such as a battery or assault.
Okay.
It could be dependent upon your state on who has the grounds to pursue after that. In Mississippi, we name it, your estate will pursue it, but only certain people can pursue it on behalf of your estate. So your 8th distant cousin in England who you've never met before would not be able to make a wrongful death claim on your behalf. However, your widow or your children would likely be able to.
Okay, so that makes sense. I've always wondered how that works as far as like, well, you can't obviously be like, if your uncle's a millionaire, but you're so disconnected and like you said, kind of live like halfway across the world, can't really do anything about it.
I'd have to look up state statutes, but I'm not even sure if the amount of communication you have with them matters as much as your direct relation to them, as in a son, daughter. If you're a child who maybe hasn't talked to him in a couple years versus a child who lives with him, I still believe that you would have that claim.
Really?
Now, if it's beyond too far removed, they no longer have parental rights over you and say you've never talked to them, that could be a different situation, and I don't know all the state laws on that. But I believe it's more of the classification you are to them than an argument over how close you are to them, whether you go to church with them every Sunday, whether you see them once a week or anything like that.
That's really interesting. I was always wondering that because I was like, how do you even pursue wrongful death? Because I could see it in an instance of there's a guy working on like an oil rig and like a cable snaps and cuts him in half, right? Which is pretty gruesome, but it does happen out there, even on towboats, and it kills him. Perfect example. God rest the guy's soul. I got a friend that works on towboats, and there was a guy that was building tow one morning on their shift, and my buddy had just come back from his night shift and was getting ready to lay down, and he walked outside, to make sure dude was good. He didn't see him anywhere, and they were in the middle of a lock.
Yeah.
With barge, and he sounded the alarm and everything. They're stopping everything. They're looking for the guy, looking, and dude is like floating, bobbing in the water. And what he had slipped off, supposedly they supposed at the time that he slipped off the barge, fell into the water, and those barges that are full of coal or fuel or rocks or whatever, when you're in a lock, it's almost like putting it's tight. It's tight. Almost like trying to put a golf ball through a toilet paper hole. It's tight. So all it would have taken is for the waves to just once, and he smacked up against that barge wall.
Jeez.
Into the lock, and it killed him on impact. Of course, my buddy got into the water. He pulled him out of the water. Put a life jacket on him. Somehow hooked him in and pulled him up, and by the time they got him up, he was dead.
Yeah.
He was dead. And but I'm pretty sure he died on impact. Usually something like that crushes you, it's over with. But in instances like that, would the family be able to sue the tow company, for wrongful death if even if it's just more, or does that get into more of a workers' comp related thing?
That's what I was about to say. I believe that does move more into a workers' comp type realm. Because I guess the wrongful death we were initially talking about with Black Friday, you know, those are acts involving negligence. And I don't know too much about boating when it comes to work and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's just a part of the job that the decks are going to be wet. You know, there's nothing you can do about that. You're working on the water.
That's right.
And unfortunately, that individual did pass while working, and I believe it would move into workers' comp then. And man, I'd have to look this up because I had an attorney tell me one time that you know, if you're just at work and you're at your desk and you just have a heart attack and die, that can even fall under workers' comp.
What?
Yeah.
So just like, even if it's no fault of the company.
Correct.
See, that's why I had to ask, because I was like, so wrongful death still is a negligence-based thing.
It can go beyond negligence because you also have intentional torts with it as well. And I believe it definitely can go towards a business. In this situation, I'd have to look at it again, I believe it falls more under workers' comp in this, but it'd still be possibly classified as wrongful death.
That's interesting, because that's what I got to ask. Because it's so confusing for me. And I mean, just looking at the Black Friday stuff, it's like, okay, there's so many weird instances. Obviously, in the instance of people getting into fights or being shot, I feel like the store can, you know, it's just kind of up in the air for the store at that point. Like, they don't really have a way to, you don't really, a family or a person that was, you know, injured wouldn't have much of a way to pursue the store because it wouldn't be the store's fault. But
and that actually just reminded me, another thing that workers' comp can differ on a little when it comes to that is there's a case in Mississippi that turned into a workers' comp case, and it was actually about an employee who came to their work and shot up the business.
oh my God.
Yeah, and
So-
I'm be honest, I don't remember how that case finished out, whether the work had to pay out the workers' comp or not. But that just shows you how things can get a little different with workers' comp than what we typically deal with here in negligence.
That's nuts. I don't even know how. See, that's why I was like, could technically somebody be getting shot, you know, at, say, Walmart or Best Buy, you know, because, you know, they got squished up against the wall and they freaked out, pulled out a gun, and just started firing into the crowd. You know, does that fall on the store? Or does it fall on, like, if it's an employee, is it workers' comp?
Yeah.
You know, like, that's another thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that one would fall under the store, but, you know, the more I learn things, the more that shocks me.
So I guess that's kind of why they call it practice.
Yeah, they sure do. You never stop practicing.
I'm trying to find something that's, see, a lot of these are homicides. Homicide. Shopper opens fire, killing one over a Walmart parking lot, like a spot. Hit by a car. Why? Okay, so here's another one. But I don't believe this is just kind of Black Friday themed. So Thanksgiving shopper in 2014 was hit by a car in Wyoming Walmart.
In a Walmart or in the parking lot?
I think in the parking lot.
I hope so.
It won't. I guess
I
it.
hope no one's driving around inside a Walmart.
God, I hope not. But I guess, well, since Walmart is such a strange thing, I guess that would be Walmart's property. So obviously, hit and run, you would probably want to sue the person in the hit and run. It's not really Walmart's fault.
Yeah, I would not say that could be put on Walmart in any sort of way, unless it's a Walmart vehicle. If it's a Walmart delivery vehicle, it changes, but...
My God. There's a former Marine stabbed in Best Buy store by violent customer.
You know, I'm shocked to see not more slip and falls on that list.
That's what I'm looking at.
Thinking about Black Friday, you know, it wouldn't be as much of an issue here in Mississippi, but say you're somewhere up north. Let's go back to the Mall of America.
Yeah.
Now let's say you've got a super snowy day. You've got customers running in. Now they're tracking ice and snow all over the place.
Which melts.
Which melts. And, if that condition isn't remedied in any sort of way, that could put the business liable. And as well, another one is that think of the 1,000 people running in. They're grabbing everything off the shelves. You got people coming from the back trying to restock the shelves. Well, as they're bringing those crates out, they're getting pushed out of the way. People are just ripping stuff off the crates, and they just, whatever, y'all have at it. They walk away. Now you've just got a crate or anything of the sorts that's just laying in the middle of the floor.
Yeah,
it could easily be a tripping hazard.
And that could cause, you see, that's why I was like, I see a lot of stampedes, but I don't really see a lot of slip and falls. And that was something that I was like, I wonder if maybe undocumented, obviously. And it's just because this is all documented accidents. Where
I'm sure there's plenty more where the injuries just weren't severe enough for anyone to say anything about it. You slip and fall and you got a bruise, but you just think nothing of it, so you just never say anything about it.
And that could come down to anything. That could come down to, like you said, like if they just pushed out a bunch of product on a pilot jack and left it out. Or here's another one. Leaving out ladders and people climbing the store ladder to get something off the shelf. I mean, I can't say I haven't done it before. Can't say I haven't done it. But I feel like that opens up a whole new can of worms.
It sure does, especially considering you yourself could contribute to the negligence by deciding to climb up on that ladder.
But if you fell off of it, could you still sue Walmart?
You could definitely still try. That would be one that would be a long fault one because they'll say it's your fault for climbing on the ladder while you say it's their fault for leaving it out. I'm going to be honest, that does sound like an independent act on your own, and you were kind of putting yourself in that position. Should they have left it out? No. But if you see a ladder laying out in Walmart, I would not recommend climbing off of it, climbing up on it.
Now, let's say you're out with your kid, and your kid's like 4 or 5 years old, and you turn your back for 2 seconds, and they're on top of the ladder. They fall off. With a ladder you didn't see. Let's say you're on an aisle, and they run away, and then parents starts looking around. They can't find them. Well, and behold, they're on the other aisle, like an aisle down, and they get on a ladder, and they fall off, and all they hear is, wah! You know how kids are.
Yeah.
And you get over there, and their head's busted wide open. They got to take them to the hospital. Obviously, at that point, Walmart would be liable, right? Or would the parent be liable for abuse? Because I know that gets funky.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that's abuse as much as potential neglect, and it's a really hard line to define there. I worked in youth court, and we proposed where we drew the line, but I don't know if there is a straight up line drawn between neglect and abuse. I would think that is a possibility that could definitely come up, that you're allowing your kid to run off in stores and do potentially dangerous activities to themselves. And when it comes to the store's liability there, you're almost in the same spot as you were before, but they'll probably look to the age and intelligence of the kid, which is typically what they look to when a kid is at fault in a tort case. It'll be age, intelligence, and things of the sort.
Really? Okay.
That's a great question.
That's what I was thinking about, because let's say the parents have like 4 kids with them. It's just mom, and it's busy. She's trying to shop. It's like Black Friday deals, let's say, maybe on like Saturday or something, or maybe it's early, maybe it's not too bad, maybe she got out, she just needs some things for the house, and she's looking at this item, she's like, everybody calm down. Next thing you know, Timmy runs off, and Timmy's autistic. Well, Timmy sees the ladder a few aisles down, and she's not paying attention, and all of a sudden she realizes he's gone. Well, in that short amount of time, anything could happen, and he gets up on the ladder, falls off. I feel like in an instance like that, maybe there could be a potential win for her, even though obviously the kid is, at
Yeah,
fault.
that would most likely come down to, I guess, whether the jury considers that a dangerous condition or not, or whether they kept their premises reasonably safe.
Right.
Because when I look at a ladder, I don't think dangerous condition
Yeah, I don't either.
whatsoever. But now that is a good question.
Is there-
That would be one that definitely be left up for a jury.
That's what I was saying is like, I have to question it from that angle because I feel like there's a lot of little instances because I see it all the time. I'm in Walmart, me and my wife are shopping, and I'll see kids playing in the toys, and one of the workers just gets fed up and leaves a ladder, leaves a buggy full of stuff. Next thing you know, the kid's upside down in it, and it's just like, oh no, because he sees something on the bottom he wants.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh God. And the worker, doesn't think anything of it because they do it all the time.
Yeah.
Walmart is bad about it. Walmart workers, no offense to Walmart workers, not saying anything bad. However, what I am saying is I see it happen all the time. And I know when I was a kid, every time I saw a ladder in Walmart, I climbed it. And maybe my IQ was tiny then. I don't know. I just had a thirst for adventure. Maybe I'm the autistic one. Maybe I was the autistic kid. But luckily, mom and dad only had me, so typically they caught it.
Yeah.
And I was a quiet kid, so I didn't do much. But I feel like I think the biggest things to look out for. And as far as Black Friday injuries is that people do have rights, obviously. If a store is apparently neglectful in the way they set things up, because I've seen it before. I've seen it where a store will set things up thinking, oh, this will contain people, like over at Best Buy. They used to have it set up to where when you walked into the store, you could only walk this one direction. You couldn't split off and go a different way. It was very constrained to the aisle. Yeah. Once you got in the aisle, you could go about, right? But I've noticed on Black Friday, they put those barricades up or they'll have employees right there, which I feel like having the employees there, much safer with like the little ropes. Much safer compared to actual barricades.
Yeah.
Because if people get smushed up into the barricades, they can break an arm or break a foot, and then it becomes an issue. And I feel like there's a negligence factor with certain employees where there's a rush, product gets left out, they push it out, they get tired of it. God knows, like if you ever sit back and watch some of like the Star Wars documentaries, especially the ones from the 90s, it's nuts. Oh my God. These people. And then, of course, now those same people have like 20 Jar Jar Binks action figures they can't sell online to save their life. But
well, that's on them for picking Jar Jar.
Yeah,
anyone.
That's what I'm saying. Like, God, you got what you deserve that day. You know that, right? Like, you really did. Before they could even get, into the, get the product out of the shipment, people would be diving into the boxes. And you could essentially kind of go back and look at these documentaries and see that it's evident that most of the retail associates were just not going to deal with the customers. They were just done with it.
Of course.
So in instances like that where you have employees just kind of giving up, I know that, of course, we kind of covered, what could happen in the instance somebody got injured, dancing around one of those pallet jacks. They're super heavy. And people just getting into the boxes, it can, cause a brawl. I feel like, obviously there's domestic implications with that, but I feel like somebody could definitely get injured in that type of situation. And I think, the best thing to note as far as going into Black Friday with expectations of going shopping, obviously the main thing is to be aware of your surroundings. But what would you say would be a good tip for people that are going out or thinking about going out Black Friday shopping?
Well, first off, I'd say do it online if you can. If they got a deal somewhere in your town and you just got to go do it, then I understand. And some people enjoy Black Friday. Not me particularly, but I understand people do. So if you are going out, be well aware of your surroundings. You don't know what's happened happening in the store when you get there prior or anything like that. You don't know what will happen. Avoid fighting over anything if you can. You don't want to
Absolutely.
escalate anything. And if you do your best, hopefully you can avoid any potential injury. But if you are injured, make sure to give us a call here at Pepper and Odom.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, above all, if you want to avoid the hustle and bustle, shop online. But if you do go out, please make sure to plan ahead. That's the biggest thing. Try to plan ahead. Try to, if you're familiar with the stores, try to know an escape route. If an emergency does arise where a shooter is present or somebody gets out of hand, try to stay calm and collected. If there is a frenzy, try to stay out of the way. Be aware of your surroundings. But at the end of the day, if you suffer an injury due to the store's negligence or let's say an employee's negligence at the store, or if there's an obstruction or they leave products out or create a situation that could harm or injure others in a negligent manner, whether it's from a slip and fall, from being trampled, from anything, and it could stem into even potentially wrongful death at a point. But if you are injured, please don't hesitate to give us a call. Keep this number in your phone just in case. It's going to be 601 202 1111. Again, call Pepper and Odom. If you don't live in Mississippi or you're not local to Jackson, we can help assist you in verifying that you do have a claim and potentially be able to give you somewhat of an idea of what your claim could be worth. So if you are injured during Black Friday shopping, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 601 202 1111. And again, thanks for watching Legal Roundup.